I want to go to Pastor Jared Longshore. He's a minister at Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho, and he's a fellow of theology at New St. Andrews College. Jared, how are you, brother?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, I'm glad you're here. So the genesis of this whole conversation today about persecution around the world and here in America is Ephesians 6:12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, authorities, cosmic powers, against this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. What does that mean? How should we be looking at? How should we live our life differently with that being true?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the American context, the first thing we have to understand is that we have, at least as of late, separated the spiritual from the physical, separated the heavenly from the earthly. And so when, say, conservative Christians come to a text like that, they think, well, I'm either dealing with some kind of physical problem that has a mere political solution, some kind of tyranny, or I'm dealing with a spiritual problem that I need a pastor for. And there's a part of that that's true, but to separate those two worlds is simply not going to work. So the persecution that you have surveyed already around the world and the different kinds of persecutions that happen in the United States are both a spiritual and a physical problem. It's a heavenly and an earthly problem. And until we learn to bring those worlds back together, we're not going to see the faith truly practiced and freely exercised in our land.
Okay, we got to go deeper into that. That's so good. So for my whole lifetime, we've lived in a country, I believe, where it's all been the physical. And with physical problems, physical solutions, that's it. And I think maybe now we're starting to get to the idea, big picture in America, no, there are spiritual forces at play. And to your point, we need spiritual solutions to that. But the next step is what you're talking about here, which is what? There's physical solutions to the spiritual problems and spiritual solutions to the physical problems. They go both ways. How does that work?
Yeah, they go both ways. I think that people are waking up to this because of COVID. I mean, when they started to shut down churches, but this was a virus, but then we shut down churches. And so what's going on here? And people started paying attention to Romans 13, which says that the civil magistrate is appointed by God and is a servant of the Almighty. And as soon as you recover that idea that where there is a principality, there's both heavenly principalities and earthly principalities, and they are somehow related. So the pre-moderns, anywhere that they saw some kind of physical throne, they would understand that there's a heavenly throne behind that. And this is not saying that your local mayor is some kind of spiritual heavenly being. That's not the idea. You don't mix them that way. We're simply saying that there is a relation between spiritual authority and physical authority, heavenly authority and earthly authority. And as I think COVID gave us a moment to actually reconsider life in this world, that we actually live in a world where there are celestials, that we are not, a secularized state really isn't a thing. It's just simply not. And so we're trying to now recover the heritage that we've had from the founding of our nation, that, we really are one nation under God, and that God has told us something about how we are to live in this world. For example, on the issue of persecution, I mean, you're going to deal with, is the free exercise of religion a good thing? Yes, and particularly Christianity, as it has been from the foundation of our very nation. So if you are going to worship Moloch and offer up your children to Moloch and claim that is some kind of free exercise of religion, well, it's just not. And God has actually said something about that. So God is the one who's defining what religion is. God is the one who's defining what persecution is. And until we recover that, you're not going to be able to sort out the chaos that's going on in our land when it comes to what's being suppressed, what persecution really is.
I have another question about Ephesians 6, but let's on that point. Do you think our founding fathers, but let's go before that, our founding grandfathers and the first peoples to come to this country, when they founded these colonies in these places, did they have in mind freedom of all the religions in the world and whatever blasphemy you can conceive of in this land?
Of course they didn't. This is Yeah, and this is not even a Christian claim. You can be as secular as you would like to be. You can be a leftist as you would like to be. You can be a fan of AOC. And all you have to do is open up any history book of any kind or go back and read the original documents that these were Christian men. Was it 50 of the 55 men at the Continental Congress were Orthodox Christians. You have Supreme Court decisions, I think as late as the 1800s, Trinity versus the Holy Trinity versus the United States, where our Supreme Court justices are claiming that we're a Christian land. 8 of the 13 colonies were actually had established churches, which would mean that, hey, we're going to be Anglican around here. And so we're not even, you don't need to argue for an established church that says a particular state needs to be a particular Protestant denomination. That's not something that's necessary, but you can certainly look back at America and say this has been a Christian land from its founding and still is today. You are not going to go into any major city in the United States and find that the dominant religious buildings are going to be mosques or Buddhist temples. They're simply not. They are Christian churches, and the vast majority of them Protestant Christian churches, as it has been from our founding.
Back to Ephesians 6. Just to drive it home again, the flesh and blood part. How are we to think about that? Like we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but like we are flesh and blood, or there is flesh and blood. What are we to do with that?
Absolutely. Well, the key would be to start with a good understanding of what a human is. What are we? Well, we are both spirit and body, and that seems to be pretty self-evident that we are being animated by something that is not merely our material. So you have a spirit, and I have a spirit. You have a soul. I have a soul, and that soul is clearly doing the animation of the physical bodies that we have. And when we die, we say if we all believed in a great dichotomy. So there's a difference between a dichotomy and a distinction. Christian theology is based on this idea of a distinction. There's a distinction between the human nature of Christ and the divine nature of Christ. There's a distinction between man and woman. There's a distinction between your body, your physicality, and your soul. But to dichotomize them is to separate, to rip them apart. And I would tell our students all the time, you certainly don't want to experience a dichotomy of your body and your soul. That would mean that your body would fall on the ground. It wouldn't move anymore. We would all be a little shocked here. Your soul would go to be with the Lord. Now, eventually that's going to happen, but that's the dichotomy that you would experience as an individual. And we have experienced that dichotomy in our nation, in our land. So what's the recovery look like? The first is to say, well, it is the spirit that animates the body. Okay, it's the heavenly that animates the earthly. And so when you're looking at any kind of change that you want to see in the world, particularly in our political situation in the United States, worship is going to be at the very center of that. We around here, we say worship is warfare, and we genuinely mean that. So the spiritual warfare that we're engaged in is going to have its physical byproduct. It's going to have downstream consequences in the political realm. It's going to have downstream consequences in how we're ordered as a society. That's true of every single individual you've ever met. How he or she deals with her soul before God is going to have an impact on his or her body. And it has the same with a nation. And so we really do need to recover prayer. This is what keeps us from being radical leftists. We really can play the long game. Politics is not our God. We actually do trust in the living God. And as we do so, we're going to find that means it's going to have an impact. We're going to want the kind of leaders that honor God as well. We're going to want to know the kind of leaders that do know what real religious persecution looks like. And they know the faux version as well, because they are rightly ordered to the Lord. As our vice president said recently, that the recovery of rightly ordered loves. We study Augustine, his City of God at the college that I teach. I walk through the entire City of God with the freshmen at New St. Andrews College over the course of a year. And so to hear our vice president talking about the Ordo Amoris is a wonderful sign that we are recovering something of this kind of the centrality of our spiritual lives before God, even as a nation, and how that's going to impact the way we're ordered physically as a society.
Love it. What a great way to end our special today. Jared Longshore, at Christ Church, Moscow, Idaho, fellow of theology at New St. Andrews College. Where can people learn more about you and learn more maybe for their kids or grandkids about New St. Andrews College?
Yeah, so I write at jaredrlongshore.com. You can find me on Twitter and Facebook and all of those places. NSA.edu, New St. Andrews College. It's a liberal arts and humanities Christian college out here in northern Idaho, in Moscow, Idaho, studying the entire Western tradition. 3 years of Latin, music, rhetoric, philosophy. You're going to be working through Plato, Aristotle, all of Christendom, Herodotus, Thucydides, Augustine, Calvin, all of the others. It's a wonderful place. You can check out more at their website, or you can find them on all of their social media platforms.
That's great. Awesome. Beautiful. Jared Longshore, great to talk to you, brother. I hope we can do it again.
Thanks again.
So much for being here. I get so psyched up when I hear about places like New St. Andrews College, and hopefully they get the publicity that they deserve. The point of today's special was to talk about persecution in the world, persecution in America. I think for far too long we've relied on the Constitution. Oh, we got the Constitution. Freedom of religion. We had it. We're good. It's like, yeah, but you have to do it. You have to go practice the religion. You can't just be like, we got freedom of it. All right, great. What are you doing with it? Go do it. Do the religion. Do the Christianity. Do the church. Go. Be it. And don't be afraid of persecution along the way. We have a podcast called Politics by Faith. Please join us over there every day. We take the news of the day, run it through a biblical filter. I think you'll like it. Politics by Faith, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Mike Slater, The First TV. Spread the word.